Okay, so we're back. We didn't take but 30 seconds from the last recording, but Chuck and I are going to talk real quick about InDesign and InDesign styles. We use those when we publish books. They are like the secret of InDesign to make sure that you don't have to do a million extra little tidbits of work. So Chuck, well, yeah, true. Now I'm going to let Chuck explain it and put him on the full screen here. But I'm Zach from Frog Guy Games. That's Chuck Wright from Frog Guy Games, and we are just talking RPG InDesign, which has got to be the most niche nerd thing we could do on a Sunday night, no less. Okay, so here we go. All right, so go ahead. Talk. What's a style, Chuck?
A style in InDesign is, I mean, there's lots of different things, but let's talk about like paragraph styles, and there's character styles. Character styles are something that you put together to help build up things for your paragraph styles. Like I've got, when I made this paragraph style for my bullets, if it's going to do it, because it may not like it in here.
You have to zoom in just a little bit, Chuck.
Yeah, those are messed up. On what?
On the just when you look at the text, you have to zoom in a little bit. There you go. Oh, you change pages. When you do a style change, make sure you zoom in a little bit closer. We'll talk about character styles later. Let's talk about just paragraph styles right now.
Character styles are most of it is InDesign making these so it can do its paragraph style.
Right. So at the very basic, Chuck, a style will contain a font.
The style,
Right, tell them.
yeah, at the very basic, a style contains a font and a size.
Right.
That's it, and a size for that font. That's the most basic. Like you see over here, FGG header 3, which is what this is. You can make it header 2 or header 1, and these are just styles. This is actually a little more than it. Whoop, and there goes my InDesign crashing.
Ha. A constant problem. No. No.
But,
Yeah.
that actually not just. I found that font was too thin to read very well, so that actually I put a stroke around all of those fonts to make them thicker because there was no bold version. I made a fake bold.
A stroke is like an outline for anybody who doesn't know.
Yeah. Well, a stroke is. I guess an outline.
That's the best way to describe it if you've never seen it. Strokes do lots of things and they affect lots of different stuff in graphic design, but the easiest way to think of a stroke is an outline for text.
Well, not even just for. It's an outline.
Yeah.
Like I'll show you here once everything catches up to me.
Yeah.
Ignore. You can see it here when I hit W actually rather well. This line around the
frame.
picture frame. It's an outline, nice little black outline. I like to use them. Not everybody does, but to my mind, it gives your eye an end to the picture. If I'm looking for something different than that, I would do what I did with the photos for this series, which is I wanted them to be more like ephemeral in appearance, and so.
But that's not a stroke though. But that you're boxing in the art. But
Not a stroke, but yeah.
but
I'm just saying.
yeah.
I was just talking about my little philosophy.
No, it's okay. You're allowed to have philosophy about what you're good at. No, but let's go back to a paragraph. Because when you pick a style, what you're doing is picking similar types of text. And so the body style is the text that you're reading. And that will tend to be a certain type of font at a certain size. And so we use Georgia, correct?
For
The body?
for the body of this.
Okay.
This is Georgia.
Nope.
You see it.
Okay, so that whole paragraph is a paragraph style. So when you click a paragraph, anywhere in a paragraph, and you change the paragraph style, the whole paragraph will change. And so you have your text style you read, your body style, your headers, which are your basically your labels over chapters and subheadings and etc. And what else do you have as a style? Do you have a title style? Right?
I have title styles. That's the headers, which is what we call title styles. Well, I come from a newspaper
Right.
Um, and I mean, I guess some of us still use headers and stuff because I think design comes from newspaper, so there's a lot of that slang bleeds over. But I have one for stat blocks. Now that depends on the system. I've got different things. For swords and wizardry, I've got a what is called a hanging indent style.
Can you show one of those on the? Can you show one of the stat blocks in here where you're talking about? Like it doesn't matter if it's swords and wizardry, just
Um,
because every time you see a change in this stuff, like the only thing that's kind of like an RPG is a math textbook, in my opinion. That when you see a change in the way either the font is or the pagination stuff is or the justification, just so it's pulled out of the regular text, so you pay attention to it, or it's highlighted just like that. That's those are different styles. So
yeah, and I use a style, and it changes it to Century Gothic. Um, Sometimes I have problems, and I'm sitting. I'm trying to get. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get this stuff to. I'm trying to get my fingers adjusted to what I wanted to do again.
okay.
See, now I'm not happy with how this turned out. I should have brought the strength down
Hold on.
and highlighted it, got rid of hyphenations.
Okay. Well, because of space constraints, though, sometimes you have to do things like the hyphenations. But that is a paragraph style right there you're looking at, and that's the paragraph style has the Century Gothic, and it has the
It's the stat block.
right exactly. And then the boldface is the character style. We'll talk about those later, but that's what makes the boldface stuff happen. So, um,
And sometimes, just depending on, I don't know, sometimes there's some archaic things going on, and the boldface will go away, and I've got to sit here and
put,
highlight this and look at another example, make sure I got everything
he's
correct that I need for boldface.
he's talking about archaic. By what he means archaic is he's talking about leftovers from Microsoft Word. Chuck hates Microsoft Word, but that's just the way it is. But anyway, so when you put the stuff, when you start the whole document, you already have your styles, do you not?
Well, when I create the document, I bring in the styles I want,
Right.
and then I place.
Where do you bring them from? So people know.
I bring them from old documents that I have.
Yeah, right.
Done and I've got them set up the way I want them to, and then I'll say here I can paragraph styles. You click up here and load paragraph styles, and then I can click on one of these
Other documents.
Yeah, these are other documents, and I open them, and it gives me that gives me no styles. Oh, it's because this is the same document, so it's only showing me
The different ones, yeah.
that this one doesn't already
But
have.
so you'll pick of what about 12, 14 styles that are basic to the whole document that you'll have.
Well, I just a shortcut. I just pick them all.
Yeah, okay.
And import them. That's why I've got all these down here that I don't use. But see, I've got text line after jump, box text before jump, a spanning header thing, light bullets. And bullets are, when you have bullet text, when you have the little dots, I created this specifically for the blight. So that, now if you'll notice it changed, let's see, I'll go there and then go back. It's the exact same font. I decided to use the same font for it, but the special thing that it does for me is, normally I have the indent, which is a P9 indent, which is, what was that, 9 points? That's 0.125, Zach?
That's 0.125.
That's an eighth of an inch of an indent, and with this style, there's a special bullet. It's actually from a text called Alice. I really liked how that dot looked in that font, so I pulled that in, and then the entire paragraph is now in a hanging
And so one of the best things about applying styles is if Chuck does 800 pages of a book, and then he goes to Bill, and this is hypothetical. He goes to Bill or another Frog God person, and they go, "Man, I hate that. You need to change that to be not an eighth of an inch, but a 16th of an inch." You can go into the original style, make the change in the style format, like on the menu that you see on the screen. You go inside and open that up, make the change, and it applies it to every single time the style shows up. So an 800-page book, I'll show you right here. An 800-page book, you make one small change, and it will change it everywhere. So it's why you want to be meticulous about styles when you lay a document out, because if you...
In that particular instance, I'd have to relay out the entire book.
I was just making a wide berth example.
In that particular instance,
I know.
It would change all the spaces in between throughout the entire book.
Right.
And that would make it that would pull all the text, remove shit.
No, and the point wasn't about the flow.
I'm just telling the people, it'll mess up the flow, and I'll have to relay out the entire book, except I'll have to do it blind because I've already removed all of the map and picture keys.
Yep.
So I would actually fly to Seattle
And kill.
in Murderville.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Luckily he just likes your books and doesn't complain. No. See, there's another piece of his art with the brushes. And do you do that in Photoshop and bring it in? How do you work that?
I do it. Yeah, I make them in Photoshop, and then I bring them over. And if it doesn't look right, I'll mess with it, redo it. But yeah, and I'll do that for maybe 25 to 30 examples, and then I'll start using some of the older ones if they work.
Yeah.
In those areas.
Now, so going back to the styles, and so when you pick your styles, they're based on ones you've already determined. But on like the Blight, for instance, the header font, is that Longbow or Agincourt? Agincourt. The Agincourt font was picked for this project, and they will be different for the next project. And so some of those things are stylistic to the book, but some of them are pretty standard. Are they not? Like, even if you change the font, for instance, in the text style, it's going to be close to the same size, right? It'll be similar to read, yeah. So, but he knows pretty much what he's going to use in advance.
This is one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
You know how sometimes if you just black out, if you highlight it, you can read it?
Yeah.
I actually did a stroke and made the stroke the depth of the font on this.
So you couldn't highlight.
If someone had this as a PDF, they couldn't highlight it and read it. It's all blocked.
You're an evil person, Chuck.
It's all actually in there. It's all.
He's an evil person.
The font, it's still blocked. Well, I asked Greg if he wanted me to do it that way. See, there's the whole thing, though. It's no biggie.
That's just funny. So,
yeah.
So when you do your character styles, now character styles, what a character style does. You don't do them?
No, character styles. I mean, with paragraph styles, it just works out. I mean, I really don't bother with character styles all that much. Let's see, Alice Light Bullet. When I was creating, that's what I'm talking about. When I was with that bullet that I was showing you, is a font. Now, when I was creating that style, Photoshop created Alice Light Bullet.
Right.
Because that's part of that style, and it embedded it in a character style. So whenever I bring this paragraph style, they embedded it in the paragraph style. So whenever I bring that paragraph style over,
it uses the character style.
Yeah.
Right. I use them.
So that's what I usually do I usually don't mess with character styles all that much.
I use them for a few. I use them for a few things. I used them when I did the GaryCon. I did the GaryCon catalog, and I've used it as a variable indicator. So whenever to report, like you're flipping through a reference book, like a dictionary, it tells you like what time and day you're at. So if you're starting at Thursday on page 36 and you end at Sunday on page 50 something, you know when you flip through on the upper right hand side, you say it's Thursday at 10 a.m. is where it starts. It ends on next page, the next spread at Thursday at midnight. So I would use variable text styles, variable character styles to be tagged into those headers. And so you can tag things that you can't tell on the screen mean anything, but you're telling InDesign how to report to like different places for characters you might need again. So they're interesting, and if you have shorter documents, you can do bold as a character style. You can do italics. You can do things like certain kinds of like, say, if you want a drop cap style just on certain areas, you can do it that way. It's not the ideal. And there's all kinds of fancy stuff that I'll never do again. But
I just use paragraph styles for that.
no, and you do books that are so long that I can't even imagine what it would be like to do the other way. So, but I'm just so people know the difference.
Fiddly little thing that I'm like, okay.
No, I know, but if
You
the
want to be fiddly.
no, I find it just interesting because there's so many things you can do that don't come up much in RPG books. But it came up in the course catalog, or it's not course catalog. Came up in the event catalog at GaryCon, and it just was
That's why there's, all these things. I
so.
mean, that's why there's so many different ways to do things. And for my purposes, the paragraph styles work just fine.
No,
I don't have to bother with the character styles, but the character styles work with mesh with something else that is good for a different type of format.
yeah, and there are things that you would never do that I would mess with just because I think it's interesting, like a grep styling inside of paragraph styles, where you assign paragraph styles to like certain words, like STR capital. If all three of those are together with spaces on each side, you could always make that bold, for example. But Chuck would point out that in a 900-page book, that will happen in places you don't want it bold, and it would be maddening. And he would be right on a 900-page book.
I would point out.
Yeah, but on a 16-page module, you could do those kind of things, and it would help me avoid mistakes. But I would never try it like he's doing it here. Do you do a book? That's all right. No, we can turn that off a second. Let me get me up on here. Do you do a book ever? Like when you do a document or do a book format? Like when we're talking about you and like I start out with a document because I never make anything more than 80 pages. But for a 900-page book, is it one document or is it a Adobe? Sorry. Okay.
No, it's
Explain that.
a lot of little documents. Well, in Adobe, there's a thing called a document called a book, INDD instead of INDD, which is InDesign document. That's INDD. INDB is in boy is an InDesign book.
Right.
And all that document is it's a way to organize other documents into a much larger book. So I'll usually take the chapters, which are what, like 50 to 150 pages in some of our projects, and I will and I keep them as separate InDesign documents, which will then be meshed together, and it automatically figures out the pages. Sometimes not automatically, so you have to troubleshoot it. Especially when you're changing the length of an interior chapter. It can get weird sometimes. But the reason I do that is so that I don't have my machine crunching 900 pages at once.
Which would kill it. I mean, what do you?
Which would kill my machine, would kill the InDesign would go down so much more often.
So talk real quick about what machine do you use and like how faithful is it to you? Yeah.
For those who care, it's 27-inch iMac, so that I can have a book open to actually larger what the book looks like. I've got an Intel Core i5 3.4 gigahertz, 16 gigs of memory. I use NVIDIA GeForce GTX, and my serial number.
No.
But that's what I use. It's a pretty, it's a fairly run-of-the-mill iMac, I think.
You've been using Mac since you were at a newspaper, though, right? You've been using a Mac since you worked for the newspaper, though, right?
Yeah, I've been using Macs and PCs my whole life. So, I mean, I actually started
True.
They taught you your first computer program. Did you program on an Apple IIe at first?
I started on a Commodore PET. It was.
So did I. And I'm not talking about school.
No, in school, yeah, no.
It's like an Apple IIe.
We had two E's. We did.
Yeah, before me it was an Apple II, and then it was the Apple IIe, but that's because the Apple company had made a deal with the government, and the government got them on the cheap. But I worked with those, and then you go into the higher programming, and I moved over to PCs. I had a Commodore at home. Excuse me, a PET, and then a C64. I never had one of those high-speed 128s.
I always wanted a C64. I had an Apple, and I preferred the Commodore. I had an Amiga growing up, so that was my favorite.
Amigas were great. Well, there's you probably know about how why Commodore and Amiga died.
Because Commodore was nothing but a stock scam. Anyway, on these notes, I'm gonna let the live stream die, and I'll talk to you a little bit after the fact. But I appreciate you recording this with us, so people can kind of get an idea of what it is you do, and why it is you never see any sunlight. I'll talk to you later, Chuck. Oh. Here. Rather than turn off the stream, I turned on Twitch. Cancel.